Morocco, serving also the Arabic world and the French side as well. And also South Africa, having invested heavily in the BPO industry, they are the top in terms of the customer support function of the BPO process industry. And
of course, having been one of the early uptakers of this industry, so you would expect them to be performing pretty well. But also help me understand this. I mean, when you look at the countries like Egypt, Morocco, and you put it well, I mean, they have the advantage of being French speakers as well as Arabic. But on the other side, we have always boasted about having the advantage of having one of the best English speaking population, you know, in Africa. So why is South Africa beating Kenya in terms of customer experience?
South Africa is beating Kenya because they went ahead in terms of setting up the capacity for these BPOs and the policies by the government. The government provided enough support for these BPOs to grow. But Kenya has emerged strongly because of their affinity to the Western world. We have very good English speaking with no accent in terms of English speaking. We beat Nigeria and South Africa in that. And that's why it's now emerging as a top destination. We also have a very highly educated workforce. Our workforce is actually right now the gold for the BPO industry. And it's because of what I told you. Most of the people that we have are graduates, people that have understood the business language and are able to support businesses across the world without without being seen as not able to not able to have that capacity to do that.
So when you talk about government support in South Africa, when you look at the kind of policy support that we have here in Kenya, where is South Africa beating us?
South Africa government was supporting the BPO industry by ensuring that they for every BPO that was employing youths, they were given very good tax incentives. They were also given incentive to employ fresh graduates, and they will get a rebate for their tax up to close to 2 years for every graduate. The government of Kenya is trying to implement this right now. That is what is bringing in the growth that we are seeing. We are also seeing the government supporting the creation of the workforce through the Ajira digital programs, offering trainings and capacity. So this is actually bringing a big impact where it's creating the workforce that now will be channeled to the workforce now that we will be selling. That we will be, these are trained workforce, not only through the academics, but also in terms of skills. So the government is using the Ajira program to be able to impact the skills, to ready these people so that they can work in that business environment that the BPO operates in.
Currently, how many people are working in the BPO industry?
I would say in Kenya, I could say, combined with the gig economy, it could be close to around 2 million people in Kenya right now.
2 million people?
Yes, working in...
So that is directly and indirectly?
Directly and indirectly. But the disadvantage that we have is that most of them are freelancers, and it's not well structured, and that is where we are coming in as players in the BPO industry to ensure that the companies that are looking for talent in Africa and in Kenya are not taking advantage by using just freelancers without paying taxes, without paying statutories to governments, because that is not going to grow the economy. That is not going to grow the people. They are not paying statutory, they are not paying the NHIF, the NSSF. You see, if you're paying a freelancer, you're just paying them directly. It's not guaranteed work, and it's not consistent work. So what we want to do is we want to make it consistent. We want to negotiate on behalf of these freelancers. We want to bring them into a full-time employment where they can be able to earn consistently, where they can be able to get benefits, and they can be able to grow a career out of the outsourcing business.
But when you say that they're hiring freelancers, and I know that there's an organization BPO operators
Yes.
in Kenya.
Yes, yes.
Are they operating outside the precinct of the law?
Yes, majority of those are operating outside the precinct of the law because they are engaging directly, because of the money transfer that has been made easy. They are able to enter into, but there's not formally, it's not formal, it's very informal. Some of these, you've had complaints and we have cases in court where a company is being sued for underpaying workers. And it's because they are engaging them not formally, and that's what is causing, that is the major problem that is there in the industry, where companies, because there's no company that is organizing the workforce and preparing the workforce and selling the workforce and packaging the workforce into contractual agreements, then these companies are going for freelancers, and when they go for freelancers, then there's no structure, and in case of employment rights, then becomes a problem. Yes.
And as an organization, as an association of
Yes.
BPO operators in Kenya, what are you doing to correct the anomaly?
Yes, so that's why we are helping to build the capacity. I know the Association of BPO of Kenya has come out strongly to register all the BPOs that are operating within Kenya, and not only in Kenya, also I think there are other organizations that are looking at Africa-wide building the capacity, supporting the policy development, supporting the government in terms of developing the policy, and also in terms of marketing Kenya as a destination for the BPO. I think that the BPO Association of Kenya has come out strongly to do that, and we are so grateful about that, which is going to continue to enhance Kenya. But let me also point for you why Kenya becomes a very hot destination also, Kimani. Kenya has a very youthful population with an average age of between 19 and close
35.
to 35.
Actually, 80% of the Kenyan population is within that bracket.
Yes, and you look at countries in the US and Europe, their median age is close to 50 to 70 years.
Yeah.
These are people that cannot do repetitive tasks, that cannot do the customer support, they cannot do data labeling, and that has really positioned Africa, because the World Economic Report says 46% of the world youth population now sits in Africa.
In Africa?
Yes. And that is the people that are going to power the next generation of innovations that are going to happen. We need workforce to power the tech. We need workforce to power artificial intelligence, because you cannot teach a machine without using a human brain. And you need people, and this is the workforce now that is going to be used for this. So Africa is well positioned. And the advantage that we have is in Kenya is that we are now advanced in terms of the infrastructure that supports this workforce to be able to work anywhere in Kenya right now. You have people working from Kisumu, working from companies across the world. You have people working from Eldoret, even in Mombasa. I know that because I've been working with global companies that have come up to set up to take advantage of this workforce here in Kenya.
And when you look at this industry, and the emerging trends, when you look at, issues like Internet of Things,
yes,
and of course the artificial intelligence,
yes,
which is really shaping the future of our technology, how are they likely to impact the industry of business process outsourcing in Kenya?
Yes. So the biggest impact, as I've told you, Brian, is that for you to be able to train machines, you use human brains. For artificial intelligence, for example, data labeling, and for example, you need a large sets of data to feed into the algorithms of this, to be able to train those machines. You need people to sit and be able to teach these machines, what's called machine learning. And that workforce sits here in Kenya and in Africa. As I've told you, this work cannot be done by people that are old. It's new technologies and needs people that are...
And when you talk about people who are old, you're talking about what age?
Between... This work cannot be done by people above 35 years. Because you're needed...
Are you kidding me?
Yes, yes.
Anybody who's above 35 years, this is not your job.
Yes, yes. Because most of these companies employ people between 19 to 35. The reason for this, I can tell you, is because the job is very repetitive. It needs you to have digital skills. It needs you to do the same job again and again, and it can be tiring. You need a lot of focus. So, so young people are the people that are actually well positioned to do these kind of jobs. Yes.
I have heard this before.
Yes.
That the reason why BPO companies, are
yes.
opting to employ fresh graduates,
yes.
Form 4 leavers, and,
yes.
and people within the bracket of 18 to 22 to 35
yes.
years, is because the pay demand is not as high as it would be for somebody who is beyond or above that bracket. How true is that? That majority of the folks who work in this industry are underpaid.
Yeah, so that is what we are coming to solve. As Appraise CX, what we are doing is to ensure that we negotiate well with these companies. It's not true because software developers in Kenya are young people. These are fresh graduates. They are one of the highest paid professionals at the moment. Data analysts are also well paid and well sought, actually. Many businesses are looking for data analysts and software developers and graphic designers. Those are people that are well paid. It's not be working in a BPO does not mean that we should underpay, and that is what we want to do to ensure that we streamline the structures and ensure that there's no underpayment by these global companies. We should take advantage of this by structuring it and ensure that these people are being paid benefits and even statutory. Because the reason why you're saying, and there is this notion that the people working in this space are underpaid is because they are contracted as freelancers. There's no contract. There's no process. There's no future, and that is what we are. That is one of the challenges that we are trying to solve. Yes.
Well, if you're just joining us, you're watching us live from our national headquarters here in KBC. We like to call it Broadcasting House. We are live, and of course, we're having this conversation around business process. Outsourcing is a big business in the world, and Kenya is one of the top 5 leading BPO industries here in Africa. And of course, we're having a conversation around how do we accelerate the growth of this industry. When you look at Vision 2030, it identifies the BPO industry, and I'm telling you this because I've gone through it, and I have told you this many times, countless times. I mean, when you look at when the document was launched back in the year 2009, the government was very, very strategic. I mean, it just wanted to place Kenya at the heart of BPO in the world. We wanted to upset the status quo back then. The industry was heavily dominated by companies in Philippines, in China, in Thailand, among others. And in Africa, we wanted to emerge as the force behind BPO. Has this happened? Yes or no? And the answer is yes and no. Why? Because we still have a little bit of policy mix-up. And of course, there are some things that we need to align. No wonder countries like South Africa, Mauritius, Seychelles, they're beating us in this game. No wonder we are not attracting companies, from the Arab world and, of course, from French-speaking nations as well as Spanish-speaking nations. And we have the manpower and the what you call the youth population that can deal with this. You're talking about the workforce. Yes, we have it here that can deal and handle this industry, and that's why we have Henry Rotich here. He's the CEO and founder of Airspace.
Appraise CX.
I mean, Appraise CX.
Yes.
He's helping us understand the challenges that we need to fix in this industry. And so, before I go on, if we have French companies, and I know there are major French conglomerates,
yes,
who have outsourced their non-core businesses,
yes,
to Africa, and a lot of this business has gone to Morocco, Egypt, and Algeria. Do we have the intellectual and the technical wherewithal to attract French players in the Kenyan market, bearing in mind that we do not have a strong French-speaking population?
I can tell you that we have that capacity, Brian. I have worked with companies that are French-speaking, and because artificial intelligence and these technologies does not require, when building the model itself, does not require, it's not language agnostic. It's language agnostic. So once you build a technology, then it applies across languages. We have French-speaking population here in Kenya that are very fluent and have that capacity to be able to handle that kind of, and we don't have a lot of competition, especially within the sub-Saharan Africa. So what I would say will leverage us in the French market would definitely be the technology that we've been able to build, and also the business the business capacity of these graduates that can support those kind of businesses. Yes.
And if you are given the opportunity and the space and the freedom to unlock the potential of BPO here in Kenya, where would you start?
Policy would be the first approach.
What kind of policy would you change?
We need the government to fast-track all the policies, the documents, and legislation that definitely allows the PPOs to operate with incentive. Sometimes these are offshore businesses, and the environment that it's very competitive business, and with no government support, it's definitely going to be very hard to bring the jobs. We need the government to also...
And even before you jump to the next point, when you look at the BPO, I mean, at the policy environment, what policies are you talking about?
I'm talking about policies of taxation.
Taxation?
Yes, for you to be able to export. Of course, I know they've opened up through the EZZ, the export processing zones, to allow BPOs to be able to export talent as any other commodity. So this and being able to get reprieve from export tax. So that has already, the government has already worked on that, and they've listed quite a number of incentive priorities that they are going to advance to the BPO. But some of this legislation has not gone through full legislation and have not been fully implemented. So we want the government to provide that kind of support. We want the government to market Kenya as also a destination. We don't see a lot of marketing happening in terms of Kenya as BPO destination. It's left to private players to be able to look for clients. And yeah, but I know the ICT
and
ministry...
who should be in charge of marketing this?
Yes.
Is it the Keproba? Is it the Ministry of ICT? Who
should be the Ministry of ICT, yes, and the Ministry of Labour, to be able to, they focus so much on exporting talent. There's been a big focus to exporting the talent to the manual workforce to the Arab market, for example, the Germany market, but there's not been a big focus to market the graduates that we have for the international market. And the advantage with that is that these graduates do not need to get a visa to go. They actually will work here. They will actually contribute to the local economy here, and they will actually grow here. So
they don't have to deal with the complex and labyrinth demands of visa application.
Exactly.
It can just be done from here.
It can be done from here.
I have seen a company setting up a BPO complex in Tatu City with a capacity of about 5,000 people. That's what they say.
Yes.
And I'm talking about CCI International.
Yes, CCI International.
And this is just one company.
Yes.
So it tells you that you know, we have an opportunity to unlock millions of jobs if only we were to do proper marketing, proper repositioning, and of course, setting up the right policies to attract big companies in the market.
Yeah, Philippines, for instance, the BPO industry contribute to 8% of their GDP.
And they have a bigger GDP
that
than
is
ours.
Above of 300,000 billion USD. Coffee and tea combined here in Kenya contribute to apparently 4%, 5%. So and what we have right now, the biggest resource that we have now is our workforce. The young graduates, almost 800,000 of them graduating every single year. So it has, BPO truly has the potential, and the government has seen that. Everyone is seeing that, but we are not working the talk. We need 100 CCI being set up in Kenya. We need companies to be able to set up BPOs. We need people to organize. We need private sector to push and support businesses that are the BPOs that are existing. We need the capacity for us to be able to match up with the competition. But the advantage, as I told you, is God-given, that we have the youngest population, and no one, even Philippines, the Asian countries have only paltry 20% of the youth population. So we have the 46% of the youth population sitting here in Africa, and we need to exactly take advantage of that.
Very good.
Yeah.
So policy is one issue that we need to deal with. What is the other challenge?
The other challenge is cross-border payments. The good thing with Kenya is that we are well advanced in terms of fintech, making sure that there's a framework and structure on how these people will get payment. The World Economic Report also talked about that to elevate the Kenyan talent or the African talent, then cross-border payment needs to be enhanced. I think we need to continue to increase the infrastructure. We don't need people to come to Nairobi. People can work from wherever they would be within Kenya. And the good thing is the government is already already having a pipeline and a plan to roll out, and has been rolling out the internet infrastructure and the capacity for you to be, because you need a laptop, you need very high-speed internet connectivity to be able to handle these kind of jobs.
And of course, I mean, when you look at the kind of infrastructure that the government is rolling out, I mean, you know, it's big. When you go through the ICT master plan, it talks about establishing digital hubs, you know, at all the constituencies and ward levels. The government is also talking about laying 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic infrastructure, which is really going to be significant going forward. And of course, the establishment of special economic zones as well as exclusive economic zones. I mean, these are some of the initiatives that the government, you know, is banking on to drive the growth of this industry. Are they enough?
Yeah, this would definitely help, but should not be enough. I think the president is really focused on that, and we've seen that he's made enough contribution to ensure that this is being done through the Ministry of ICT. I know PS Tanui is really working so hard to ensure that this is being implemented. But now I think on the private sector as well, we need more companies to come up. We need to set up and support the hubs and work directly with the hubs. We need the capacity for training, not only for digital skills, but also for business skills. Like accounting is a very high paying job through the outsourcing industry. We need to build capacity for the same, and accountants in Kenya should be thinking about how they can outsource the work, not only to work with the companies that are in Kenya, because we are a small economy, and all the accountants that we are churning out in our universities will not have the opportunities within Kenya. We need to outsource that kind of things. So other industries like medicine, telemedicine is something that is growing. Legal is growing. We will not employ all the lawyers that are graduating within our universities. They can be able to provide that with using the technologies that are happening, and using AI. It's possible for us to be able to sell these kind of skills outside. So it needs to move from just the traditional BPO, which is provide customer support, to also other industries.
Oh, yes. And I know also Rwanda, I mean, it's moving very fast and positioning itself strategically as the leader in BPO deployment here on the eastern seaboard of Africa.
Yes.
And they're really moving fast and really trying to, you know, unsettle Kenya in this position. What advantage are they having over Kenya?
The advantage that they have over Kenya is the French speaking. They have a population that's fluent in French. So I would say that would be the advantage. But
and they can also speak English, yeah?
And they can also speak, so they can what's called multilingual. Yeah, so they have that multilingual capabilities. What I would say also is they are, as well as our government, they are also quite focused on this opportunity. But also countries like Ghana are emerging as also very strong because they are also multilingual as well, because they're in West Africa. And we should focus in Kenya. What we should focus more is that we have the advantage, especially our affinity to the Western culture. Kenyans are known to be able to speak fluently and easily fit in to the American and the European culture than any other country across. Yes.
Oh, you know, I've been listening to you, and you've been talking about you know, our demographic advantage.
Yes.
You've also been talking about the fact that, you know, as a country we have invested significant amount of resources in expanding our ICT industry, and of course expanding the infrastructure that is needed to enable these.
Yes.
And bearing in mind that Kenya has one of the fastest internet connectivity here in Africa, as well as one of the highest mobile phone penetration in Africa. These are some of the low-hanging fruits, you know, that we can pick and run with.
Yes.
So why are we failing to do this?
As I told you, we have not, while we have this kind of infrastructure, we've not told the world that we've not told the world that we fully have these capabilities, and we need to directly engage companies that are looking at outsourcing. So where we are failing is that we've not yet built a structure locally to be able to engage with global companies that are looking to outsource to Kenya. And we are letting all the companies that have had a success are global companies that are coming to set up in Kenya. It's not companies that were originated and grown here in Kenya, so we need to grow more of the local companies in the BPO sector. We need to we need more of what you talked about, CCI. We need 100 of them, as I told you. That would definitely help us to really, because as a destination, the companies that are looking to outsource are not looking at just outsourcing to one company. They are looking at outsourcing to many companies. And we have many companies here in Kenya ready to take that up. Then it will definitely position Kenya as where it should be. We should be way ahead. And that is why we are taking the steps, especially at Appraise. We are looking at providing the excellent customer experience using the workforce, which is the gold actually right now, and also using the technologies that are available. And the good thing is that most of the workforce know how to use these kind of technologies. Yes. And some of them have been actually built locally. Like Elo AI is a technology that has been used across the world. It's being used for customer support. It's an intelligent customer support application, and it can be embedded on any platform. And it was built here in Kenya, and it's being used across the world. So it's not only the ability to be able to use to be able to support, but also being able to use these tools as well. Yes.
I just want you to be prophetic for a moment.
Yes.
And project where this industry is likely to be by the time we get to the year 2030, and I'm talking about 6 years from now.
Yeah, so it's gonna, by 2030, I think it's going to be employing maybe double what what the industry is employing right now in Kenya. That is what I would put it at. So BPO industry is going to be employing more and more youths, double what we are actually being able to deliver. It's going towards 2050. It's going to be the biggest GDP contributor to the Kenyan GDP.
You see that happening?
Yes, yes. It's going to be the biggest. It's going to beat any other industries.
It is going to topple diaspora remittances,
yes,
coffee, horticulture, tea, and all this.
Exactly.
Are you serious?
Yes.
You know what, we're going to be here in the next 50 years.
Yes.
I mean, we may be old, but
15 years, 20 years, will come here. Because I remember Philippines, from the report, is that they started this initiative in 2000, in the 2002. Within just 20 years, it has toppled everything that contributed to their GDP, and now contributes to 8%, the highest GDP earner to their country. And the advantage that we have is that everything looks aligning to us. As I told you, the workforce, in terms of the age, it's something that we didn't plan. We didn't plan that we have the youthful population. We should take advantage of that.
It was not a strategic move by us.
And the tech revolution, in this tech revolution, the workforce is going to come from Africa. The industrial revolution, the workforce came from China and the Asian countries. It was their time. I would say this is Kenya's and Africa's time.
This is Kenya and Africa's time.
Yes.
And we need to seize the moment.
Yes.
Do you want someone to tell us anything else before I let you go?
I think that is it, O'Brien. I think these huge opportunities in this industry, as we've talked about, it's going to employ many youths in thousands, and any youths that are looking at, I would say, that are looking at this program and watching KBC Channel 1, I would tell them to look for the skill sets, the skills. It's free online to be able to learn some of the skills that are needed for the BPO industry. That is from customer support all the way to software development, to data analysts. Those are the skills that will be for the future, and the future definitely will be working online. Yes.
And I like the fact that you're also bringing in the aspect of the demands of the future. You know, where the future of jobs is likely to be. And I know that we still got more kids up in the house. You know, waiting and looking for opportunities, and people who are also likely to join institutions of higher learning. I mean, if you were to advise them, what kind of expertise or courses would they go for? Yeah,
the ones that are coming top right now is in project management, in AI, learning artificial intelligence, in not just the traditional courses. The advantage with AI is that it's creating new jobs, and it's creating new opportunities, and things like but things like project management would definitely exist all through. Things like what I would say, data analysts is really something that is huge. Every company needs a data analyst, needs someone to look at their data and interpret and explain. So those are some of the things that the trending jobs that are coming up, and I would definitely encourage anyone who wants to work in this industry. Yeah, but not only to learn the skills, but also to learn how to work in that industry. They should learn the American culture, the global culture of business. They should learn, and those are free courses. They should also learn how to manage their time, because if you're working online, no one is supervising you, and you're supposed to be delivering the work, then definitely you need to know how to manage your time. And those are free courses that are online. You don't need a university to do those, and definitely you'll be ready for the market. Yeah.
I mean, I like the fact that you know, we've been having this conversation. Of course, you're giving more ideas to young people, you know, on what kind of technical expertise they should go for, even as they think about their future.
Yes.
Henry Rotich, we can go on and on all day. Unfortunately, we've never had the luxury of time on screen.
Yeah.
It was nice to see you. And of course, let's keep on talking so that we can drive the growth of this critical sector in Kenya. Yes. We still need more jobs in this country.
Yes.
Do you want to say something else? Do you want to say kwaheri?
Kwaheri. Thank you.
Asante sana.
Asante.
Henry Rotich is the CEO of Upspace.
Harry Rotich.
I mean Henry, not Harry, not Henry. Yes. I'm still stuck with Henry Rotich, the former CS for National Treasury. We've been having this conversation around the BPO industry here in Kenya, and of course what we need to do to strategically position ourselves as the leaders in this field. Remember, Kenya is one of the top leading countries in BPO industry here in Africa, but we're getting more competitions. He talked about Ghana. I'm also throwing in Rwanda, which is also becoming, you know, a major competitor in this region for BPO, and also Ethiopia is also coming up. So if we don't set up our houses in order, then anybody else is going to come up and zoom past us, and we're going to lose the market. O'Brien Kimani is my name. The first hour is gone. The second hour is coming up. Guess what I told you? We'll be looking at the climate change conference, which is taking place from Monday next week. It's happening in the city of Baku. I want you to go to internet and search where that is, in the country of Azerbaijan. More than 50,000 delegates are going to troop to that city so that they can discuss the future of our world. It's going to be critical. I'll be there and I'll give you more updates. That conversation is coming up right here after this short break.
I know Kinanzu is a very inconvincible person.
Okay, Kamene, today have it your way. I am not going to even correct you. I can't.
I mean, wait. Do you guys still get some beating from your parents? As big as some of you are?
You just know I will leave my mother's house when I am 33 years.
That is the way to go, Kamene. Adulting is not the way we thought. See everything the way we thought. See, easy.
Angalia juba yako.
Tukate maji.
Nini?
Kwani nini? Kama wewe hujui nini mimi nitajuaje? Ni wewe umekuja nacho, niambie ni kitu gani?
Nini?
Nikipoteza chochote chumbani mwangu, nisiulize wale ambao naishi na wao.
Kati ya wale unaishi nao, uko na siri ndio wa kwanza. Hivyo viatu na nguo tunavaa na wewe.
Sikiza nikupe ushauri mdogo. Baada ya kuvuta bangi, hakikisha umekunywa maziwa. Sawa?
Where am I?
I'm going to report this to the police right away. He will panic and do something stupid. I will destroy him and everybody else who helped him do this.
For the first time, I feel very, very powerless.
At least now he feels what it is like to almost lose a loved one.
Ajikwe, nataka unitrakie namba 2 urgently. Did you najua ziko in the same location?
My father will never let it go. He will find you.
Mbona venye mzee wako nataka tukacheze? Tukacheza.
Uliletewa na mtu. Hiyo mtu ni nani alikuletea hiyo makali kukata? Hiyo kali kukatakatwa.
Ni wewe. Kama mimi na ngoja customer alete gari. Watengeneze. Na sisi hapana watu ya kuharibu.
Ndio nakuuliza unakuia nani mkali? Sasa si hiyo kali tulikuwa tunauza nini? 1.2.
Uko sure? Sasa na ulikuwa umekataa, ulikuwa na.
Anasema wanausanga.
Kwa hivyo mlikuwa mkiuza.
Ilikuwa 150.
Kama sijui kuendesha kali, driving natoa wapi?
Unajua.
Sijui kuendesha kali my friend. Kitu ambaye najua kuendesha saiti ni pasikili.
Ukiona huyo nywele hapo nao lakini akili.
Na wewe sasa hauna nywele, kwa hivyo hauna akili.
Wewe mwenyewe hauna nywele.
Kwa hivyo hana akili.
Hauna akili hata wewe.
Nini?
Kwani nini? Kama wewe hujui nini mimi nitajuaje? Ni wewe umekuja nacho, niambie ni kitu gani?
Nini?
Nikipoteza chochote chumbani mwangu, nisiulize wale ambao naishi na wao.
Kati ya wale unaishi nao, uko na siri ndio wa kwanza. Hivyo viatu na nguo tunavaa na wewe.
Sikiza nikupe ushauri mdogo. Baada ya kuvuta bangi, hakikisha umekunywa maziwa. Sawa? Toka. Nani hapa?
Kappabashi is a district in downtown Tokyo under the gaze of the towering sky tree. It's famous for its many stores selling kitchen and cooking utensils. An 800-meter stretch of this road contains about 170 specialist stores. Dedicated cooks, whether professional or amateur, can find anything they need here. The most popular purchase is the Japanese kitchen knife, or hocho.
2 sentokus, which is the traditional knife in Japan. And the knives especially, I know that the craftsmanship is quite high.
This store has been in business for 100 years. It has an eye-catching display of knives, all forged by artisans using traditional techniques. Such finely edged knives are prized by Japanese chefs for precisely slicing and carving sashimi and vegetable dishes. This store has always taken great pride in the superior sharpness of its blades. These hocho cut so well because they have such extremely thin edges. To achieve this, the shop's own artisans sharpen each blade with extreme care. A good knife is one that cuts cleanly, leaving an absolute minimum of irregularity on the surface of the food. This gives the best mouthfeel and the best taste. These shops sell everything the discerning chef needs. For example, to make the multi-layered Japanese omelette known as tamagoyaki. You'll need a specially shaped frying pan made from copper. We use copper because it conducts heat so well. This lets us quickly cook each layer of egg and roll it up without losing any moistness. That's what makes these omelettes so fluffy. You'll also need a dedicated item to make sushi rolls. Keen chefs use a bamboo rolling mat. The flexibility of the thin bamboo slats makes it easy to shape a perfect roll. A mat is essential when making thick futomaki sushi rolls. This is a tawashi, a traditional style of scrubbing brush. It's made from plant fiber. The flexible fibers thoroughly clean away even the smallest particles. With a tawashi, you don't need detergent, just water is fine. They'll clean vegetables without scraping or bruising, preserving all the flavor. Making children's meals can be a burden for busy parents, especially if both are working. New kitchen gadgets are now making their lives easier. This knife manufacturer is leveraging its blade-making expertise to develop new kitchen products. We design for those who want to make meals quickly, but who are also keen on cooking skillfully. This product makes slicing salad easier. And here's a better vegetable peeler. they designed this small cutter for delicate carving. Now it's easy to get creative and add decorative touches to box lunches. What we try to do is develop products to make cooking fun instead of a chore. If they can enjoy it, we hope people will be willing to put in a little extra time and make more interesting meals. The same ideal led them to also develop cooking utensils specially for children. Designed for small hands, these miniature knives cut just as sharply as their adult versions. Now children can take the same joy in cooking as their parents. Good kitchen utensils not only make cooking fun, they're an essential support for the nation's food culture.
Welcome back. You're watching BizCheck live from Broadcasting House here in Nairobi. O'Brien Kimani is my name, and the first hour is gone. We had a great conversation around the business process and outsourcing here in Kenya, the challenges, the opportunities, and the hanging fruits that we need to pick so that we can run with the field to which we are likely to lose as our appeal as an African giant in the BPO industry. Time now to focus on to the second hour, and we want to have a look at a critical meeting which is taking place from Monday next week all the way to the 22nd of this month, that is November. And more than 50,000 delegates, policymakers, as well as non-state actors, you know, they're going to set their eyes on the city of Baku, Azerbaijan, for the 29th edition of the Conference of Parties. We like to call them COPs. And what is going to happen there is that critical conversations around climate change, climate financing, as well as adaptation, you know, the phasing out of fossil fuels, is likely to take center stage in those conversations. You know, Africa, as we all know, you know, has always borne the blunt of climate change. I mean, it's losing billions of US dollars when it comes to, because of, you know, vagaries of weather. We're talking about floods, we're talking about droughts and so much. I mean, just last year, about 2 years ago, you know, Kenya as a country was impacted massively by a major drought where we lost more than 100 billion Kenya shillings, you know, to this drought. We are still recovering. So many small-scale farmers, you know, lost their herds. They're still recovering, and we need to start having serious conversations around how to tame climate change. It's having a major impact here. We're also going to look at the Paris Agreement. And of course, remember the rich nations back in 2009, they promised to pump more than 100 billion US dollars into the economies of emerging nations, where Africa is one of them, to help them deal with the crisis of climate change. I mean, you talk to so many people, they don't have an idea where this money went, if it ever came. And of course, remember yesterday was a historic day in the US, the election of Donald Trump. This is going to have major ramifications on the space of climate change. Remember, he has always been a climate change denier. He doesn't believe in these. He has said that he's going to roll back all the policies that had been put by President Joe Biden, whose aim was to deal with climate change issues like, you know, slowing down on gas and oil drilling and so much. So we we're going to look at the impacts of all these on this show. And the team of experts is in the house. We're talking to Susan Otieno. She's the Executive Director at Action Aid Kenya. She's joining us this morning. She's on my extreme left. Thank you very much, Susan, for joining us.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank
and we have Dr. Mithika Mwenda. He's the Executive Director at Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. He's also joining us this morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Ari.
Thank you.
Very good. And just immediate on my left, we have Esther Mutuma. She's the CEO of Boreka Group. Asante sana, Susan. I mean, not Susan, but Esther.
Happy to be here.
Very good. I want to start with the events that happened yesterday. We saw the re-election of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States of America. This is coming just a few days before the world leaders meet in the city of Baku. How is this likely to impact the war against climate change? I want to hear from you, Dr. Mithika.
Thank you, O'Brien. And yeah, it is a very sad day for us in the climate movement because, as you have rightly said, Donald Trump is a distinguished climate denier. And he doesn't believe in science, and he doesn't believe in anything progressive. He's a racist, and he's a person who has a lot of contempt to other races, particularly to Africa. And so, during his campaign, of course, he announced and he said he is going to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement, which will not be a surprise for us because he did it in 2016 when he became the president once again. And so we are not expecting anything from the US. And you remember when President Obama in 2009 during the establishment of the Green Climate Fund in 2010, the United States and him, Obama, committed $3 billion to the Green Climate Fund. By the time he was leaving, he delivered $1 billion.
Yep.
So since Trump took, he withdrew and he didn't honor that American commitment. And by the time he was kicked out, very embarrassingly, he did not deliver it. By the time we left, by the time even during the Democrats, the time the outgoing president, Biden, did not deliver that $2 billion. Because as you have said again, there has been a lot of, the US system is very complicated. The money is allocated by the House and the Congress, which again has now been taken by the Republicans, and also the House is controlled by the Republicans. So we are seeing like the Inflation Reduction Act, which is actually entirely a climate change act, which had committed $327 billion for climate action and energy transition in the United States. All these are at stake. And so, during the period of this climate denial, we are not going to expect anything from the United States. But the caveat is here that we are not worried. The US has a choice. And we have told them, when the former Secretary of State, John Kerry, came here, I and Susan met him during the African Climate Summit. And we challenged him.
In September last year.
In September last year. We challenged John Kerry at a meeting, a bilateral meeting. You are very good, whether you are in Democrats or you are a Republican, we have never seen the US being very serious on climate action. In any case, in fact, you Democrats, you have been there in the last 4 years or 3 years, but we have not seen anything from you. The role which you play actually is more obstructionist of the progress in negotiations rather than even helping the global action. US is just lip service. So we told them, we believe, in my view, we may be worried, but the world has moved. With or without US, with Democrats or without Democrats, or with the deniers, all of them, we have decided to go. The world has decided to move.
The climate train has left the station.
It has left the station. So we are not, of course, we know it is going to be more difficult. He will roll back, but he will not roll back the world.
Very good.
Unless he forms a coalition of the deniers, because I've seen a lot of congratulations, we hope that he will not influence others. But the public, the global citizens have said we are going to take action on climate change.
Very good. I want to bring Susan on board. I mean, you see, yesterday when I was listening to President-elect Donald Trump, I mean, he just talked about many issues. And climate change was not one of them. You know, and if you talk to many leaders, I mean, climate change is one of the topmost threats facing the world today. You know, Trump talked about the abortion, he talked about inflation, he talked about jobs, he talked about migration crisis in the US. He never talked, not even a single word, around climate change. What does that tell the world?
I think first, allow me to register my disappointment in the US. They had an opportunity, a second opportunity, to elect a female president. We keep questioning if they truly believe in women leadership. We are questioning where they want to place their face in conversations about promoting women leadership going forward, because they've demonstrated it in these particular elections as well. We are also looking at issues to do with color. So it's disappointing. Nonetheless, I'm not an American. Coming back to climate change, again, as Dr. Mithika has said, it's equally disappointing when renowned leader who can see the effects of climate change, especially on developing countries, who can see how climate crisis is rolling back development. It's affecting all sectors. There's no single sector that has been spared in the developing countries. At what point will they start talking about solidarity or the need to ensure that the developing countries are treated fairly? And so we are out here, we want to see where he's going to lead the US, even though we know. In the meeting that Dr. Mithika has referred to, that we met John Kerry, he was very clear that Congress does not entertain any conversation on climate financing from government funding, to speak the least. And that is truly a disappointment, because we know the large contributors. Who are the contributors to the greenhouse gases? We know what the developing countries are contributing to. In fact, nearly zero, I would say. And so why can't we continue to see the developed countries, the ones that have benefited as they polluted this continent, this globe, those countries taking responsibility? And we are hoping that as we go to COP29, despite these elections, we still believe that as we go into negotiations, we'll be looking at how financing is going to reach the developing countries, or reach the South. Yeah.
Turning on to Esther, I know you are a big advocate of you know, carbon credits, and we've seen whereby now the Republicans are in charge of the two houses, and this is likely to have a major impact on the decisions made by the two houses. What is your position on the re-election of Donald Trump?
Unlike my colleagues on the table, I don't have very strong opinions over who wins the U.S. Elections, because the way the U.S. economy is structured for ages, it's a capitalistic state. So it's always about business. And we all know that America has interests, not friends. So whether whoever sits or which house runs, the question we need to ask ourselves as a continent is, what can we do to make it a bargaining opportunity for us? What is it that we can do? Because there is government, then there is private sector. And like we know, even in critical sectors like health or even education, we always have a play of what government is doing and what the private sector is doing. So from my lens, coming from a private sector player perspective, I am not too worried about the policies they will make, because like Dr. Mideka said, the train has left the station. There are people who understand that we all need to be in a livable planet, whatever the case, regardless of our political affiliations. We want the planet to work, not just for us, but for future generations. So my concern would be more around what is it that we are doing, because the truth is nobody's coming to save us. So we must really realize that as Africans, as the Global South, it's our responsibility to try and see what it is that we can do, because it's been the status quo. The industrialized nations and developed nations, they've developed by extracting resources from Africa. So we cannot wake up one day and expect that they will wake up and decide, oh, now we are going to fix the continent or fix the globe. They'll carry on their business as usual. So it's up to us to ask ourselves, what do we need to do differently so that we make this now a commodity? Can we trade? Will the Republicans listen to us if there's a business opportunity, for instance, which the US being capitalistic as it is and the rest of the world, I am sure there's an opportunity for trade. And when we come to the table from a trade perspective, then we change the narrative. And O'Brien, the mistake we make is to imagine that we are beneficiaries. We are not. We are actually investors. And I'll talk a bit more about that, because when you look at what we have to offer as Africans, it's land, it's resources like solar energy, which is free, God-given. You know, we get more sun than they will ever get. And we don't even have to store our energy the way the rest of the world has to invest a lot of resources storing energy. So we have a couple of advantages that we can leverage on. So instead of, for me, instead of looking at it from all gloom, I would like to see the opportunity. Challenges always present opportunities. So the question is, what is this big opportunity, and how can we?
I know, Mithika, you want to respond to what
I think
before you respond,
Esther. Yes,
or as you come, I want you to combine your response to what Esther is saying. You know, the COP29 has been dubbed as the COP of finances.
Yes,
and we know that the US has always been a major contributor.
Yes,
to climate financing, adaptation funds, and others. And what is this likely? What is the re-election of Donald Trump likely to do to financial commitments by US companies and by the US government, even as you respond to
yeah, so I think my sister here, Esther, is coming from a background of business, but I think I need to educate her on some very fundamental principles of the global climate discourse processes and the obligation of the countries like United States and Africa and all of us based on what we have agreed at multilateral level. And so maybe she could have joined the bandwagon at, you know, very maturing stage, and so she may not understand this background. And that is the mistake which we have, those are the mistakes which we have really, some of us have made. Never have we ever said that the obligation of the United States is charity for Africa. No. It is their obligation under the Climate Change Convention, where countries met, and the US, alongside other international partners and the countries, said, yes, we have spoiled nature. Yes, we have pumped the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. There are people who we have harmed out of our actions, and hence there are two things which are in the what we call United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, agreed and adopted in 1992 during the Rio, and then that is what binds us. What does that say? The US, under what we call the principles of the commitment which we have, is that they committed that we are going to provide finances either to mitigate or to make countries which are armed because of our actions to adapt to the impacts of our actions. So up to there, business or without business, they have obligation, and they have always been really delivering on that.
Yeah.
That's why people like us work and action and those others fight over what we call climate justice. That you caused this problem,
yes.
You cannot exploit me, come and burn my house, and then ask me to build my house. That's what they want to say, and that is how the narrative they want to bring to our business people, private sector, and I don't think we have really private sector, which I know that we are pretending to have private sector in Africa, but we do not have. These are socio enterprises, okay? So that is one. The other point which we have then to understand is that, of course, the world has moved. Whether you are in the north or south, based on science, is that we agree that there is that concept that we have really to transition. The world has moved. We are moving to the world of low carbon climate resilient development pathways, where, including our business, we are not going really to grow through the pathways which the US companies and those others have grown, so that now we reach where the level we have reached. We have agreed on that. And so what we need to do is, including even on the Paris Agreement, even which really recognizes the role of our business, we have agreed that all of us must grow towards that pathway. But we have, even when you look at our Paris Agreement, what it says is that, like in Kenya, our NDC, National Determined Contribution, these are sectoral thematic, like our NDC investment, which our other governments, even our governments, are supposed now to do. So I want to educate even you, so that when we are discussing, we discuss on the basis of knowledge, because sometimes we miss our point. So let me finish. Allow me to finish.
Because we need to pick something in Mombasa.
Yes. So what we need to do is to agree that even our NDC are framed on the basis, on the condition that we get international financial support. So even if it's our business, where is that going to come from? We are very poor, we are depending on debts.
Very good. Hold your thoughts. I can see you are shaking your head.
Yes.
We are here to learn and, of course, to educate each other.
Yes.
And, of course, to help the public understand the issues that are shaping the global climate agenda. And, of course, remember, the big meeting is coming up on Monday next week. We want to go to the city of Mombasa, where the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya is holding their annual convention there. Regina Manyara is on standby. She's going to give us an update on the issues transpiring in that conference. Regina, take it up.
Well, good morning, O'Brien. Rightfully put, we're coming to you live from Mombasa County, where the Institute of Surveyors is having a two-day conference that is themed, that is the 9th ISK Africa Regional Conference, themed around looking at land as well as the built environment in light of climate change. So joining me is the president, that is Eric Nyandimo, to just tell us, we've had quite the questions when it comes to the role that technology is playing to bridge the discrepancies that are affecting the land process and actually driving the cost of business. What are you doing at the helm of the Institute to ensure that, surveyors go tech and reduce this gap?
One of the things that we are doing to be able to do this is to do training and capacity building for our members. And also advocating, doing a lot of advocacy, especially with the Ministry of Lands, the National Lands Commission, and the county governments, working with them to institute the development of digital land information management systems that can be able to ensure that you have proper records, and that citizens and professionals like ourselves can be able to search easily and be able to retrieve records in a manner that can enable us to be able to offer better services to those who are looking forward to services in the land and the built environment, and also to reduce on the cost of doing business, because if somebody is looking for data and it takes days or months for them to be able to access that particular data, or they have to travel to be able to look for that data, it increases the cost of doing business.
Now, as we look at our environment when it comes to how much land is actually documented, from the survey from the Institute of Surveyors, it indicates around 80%, 80-90% of the land that we have is not properly demarcated, per se. We are still using the general fencing, and then you're talking about digitization. How are you going to marry that?
So that brings in a difficulty, because it is only possible for you to digitize when you have what we call coordinates, when you have boundaries that have been mapped mathematically and fixed by a surveyor. Where you have general boundaries with no coordinates, it becomes a very difficult scenario, and there would be need for the government to institute appropriate mapping techniques or programs to see to it that these boundaries can be mapped. But again, if we look at the legal and the policy framework, it already says that we need to fix all our boundaries. It's already in the Land Act and also espoused in the Land Registration Act, and therefore it is time now that the government insists or calls out to the surveyors who are working out in the field that only fixed boundary surveys be submitted to the Director of Survey for checking and authentication.
Then where does this leave those who are already, working within the provisions of the general boundaries?
It doesn't really affect them much because this is just a case of technology being applied, ensuring that their boundaries are well mapped and to reduce on any conflicts, because where you have planted boundaries, it's easy for one neighbor to move the boundary, but when it is fixed mathematically, even if somebody moves a fence, the boundary can be easily re-established.
Now, talking about the regulatory framework, he chaired a task force in 2021 that was charged to just come up with guidelines to just streamline surveying in the country. And just early this year, we also had surveyors calling and asking the government to actually have an update of the Surveyors Act. What is the status report?
These reports are still with the Ministry of Lands. As I have said before, we worked on 3 documents: the Land Surveyors Registration Bill, the Survey and Mapping Policy, and also the Survey and Mapping Act. These are documents that would ensure that there is proper management of the surveying profession in the country, and would also ensure that the way the survey work is being undertaken in this particular country becomes properly guided, ensuring that we reduce on quacks there and professionals who are working in the field, and ensuring also that the work that is submitted to the Director of Survey for checking and authentication is actually fixed. So these documents are still with the ministry, and it is up to the ministry to now move those documents forward.
Well, there you have it, O'Brien. This is what is happening down in Mombasa County for the next 2 days. The Institute of Surveyors bringing together surveyors that are drawn from across the globe, including Europe, as well as the larger East African community. The conversation is around how do we leverage technology to look at the changing dynamics, especially where climate change is involved, in a rapidly moving, or rather dynamic, land and build sector. Now back to you, O'Brien.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Regina, giving us that update from Mombasa, and of course what's happening here at the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. We'll, of course, get more details in the course of the day. We are back in studio in the company of Dr. Mithika Mwenda. He's the Executive Director at the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. We're also in the company of Esther Mutuma, the CEO of Boreka Group, and finally, Susan Otieno, Executive Director at Action Aid Kenya. All of us, we're having a conversation around the impact of climate change, and of course the upcoming COP28, which is taking place starting Monday next week in the city of Baku, Azerbaijan. We were, setting the ground, and of course asking ourselves, what is the likely impact of the re-election of Donald Trump to be the president of the United States? And we heard from you, Dr. Mithika. Do we give Susan an opportunity also, because I know you also wanted to respond to what Esther said, so you can combine the two.
Yeah, thank you. Just to reiterate that we still have to hold countries responsible, and that is why we are talking of climate justice. Justice is justice. Mm-hmm. If you pollute, you pay up. If you're in fossil fuel, start working on phasing out, but also reparation. Mm-hmm. So we cannot talk of Africa as being needy or going in as beneficiaries. No one has said so, and we will never say so. Africa is never going to cope with a begging plate. Mm-hmm. we are going to cope with the rights that we have as Africans and therefore even as Kenya. Remember, what is at stake in COP29 is that in 2025, the UNFCCC climate finance target of 100 billion comes to an end. And so we want to see that there are negotiations that will bring on board new post-2025 climate finance targets. That is what we are pushing. We are pushing also to ensure that the rich countries that have failed us to this level, we continue holding them accountable, because you cannot enter agreements and walk out of them at will. If you walk out of them at will, we still need to let it be known that you are the ones who are letting people down. Just as we've said, the US has always gone in and frustrated every engagement over terminologies, over commitments that were made. So we are saying this time they still need to be held accountable. Again, what we are saying is that we are talking of grants. We do not want to talk of loans. We do not want, therefore, to continue using loans to push countries into more debts. We have seen what loans are doing. We are pushing countries into more debts, and you realize that majority of the loans that are taken, one way or the other, we are trying to adapt or mitigate for the climate crisis. We're also looking at COP29 as being an opportunity for countries to keep pushing further and keep demanding for the support, the commitment to be delivered. At least 1 trillion is what we should be talking about, leave alone the 100 billion.
1 trillion.
1 trillion. Why? Because you are bringing in the loss and damage financing facility that by end of this year, they should have set up mechanisms, and the fund, the facility ought to be running. So there's a lot to look up to when we are going to COP29, and we cannot go in there as a Kenyan or African countries and forget about Africa's crisis. Even if we talk about bringing on board the private sector, which we appreciate very much, we should be looking at what the Paris Agreement recommended, that we want technology transfer. So you cannot come and say you're not transferring the technology to Africa. You will not have solved the problem. You cannot come and say that you want more money on mitigation, yet we are still food insecure. So these are the areas that we really want to push and continue pushing. And remembering that we have to critically look at adaptation for Africa. We cannot miss on that. We'll continue.
I also want to hear this, and this is what I want to hear from Esther, and as you respond to what Dr. Mithika was talking about. Susan is talking, is bringing in the fact that Africa needs about $1 trillion US, to deal with various crises of climate change. It's getting about 30 to 35 billion US dollars. I mean, this is hardly enough. Should we be going to COP28 to demand for more climate justice in terms of funding, or should we go to COP29 to look for businesses?
Great. And to set the record straight, first of all, to my fellow panelists, I'm very aligned to climate justice, because every day we work with the most vulnerable communities. The most hard hit right now as we speak, our farmers have been waiting to plant trees, and they cannot even dig holes because the ground is too hard, because they've experienced a 5-month drought. So I'm very aligned as far as climate justice is concerned. I'm very clear in my mind that we need to push that agenda. And having experienced different regimes, maybe the reason I'm in the position I am in, because I started working in this space 12 years ago, 13 years actually today, marks 13 years since I left the bank to go and do social entrepreneurship, working with communities on climate change related issues. And it's interesting to say that I lived through the Democrats' time, 2013, 2014, 2015, and I went through a Republican phase from 2016 to 2020, come back the Democrats, and I can tell you for free, some of the things that have happened in this space in regards to whether we are pushing for money to be increased or we are looking for business, it's very difficult to actually make it tangibly. It's not tangible. We cannot tell what has this 100 billion that is said to have been committed and met in 2022, what has it accomplished for the African continent? And when I look at where the problems are, climate justice-wise, It's actually in how those funds are distributed. There's a real big issue in who even manages those green climate funds and who even runs those projects. Because today, if as a locally led initiative, as a local project, we are not able to raise $30 million, but a foreigner who comes and sets up shop like us can easily raise that money simply because the GCF headquarters is in Seoul, which is not even a developing country. I don't know why the headquarters are there. So there's so much structural issues that need to be addressed. And I think that is one of the things that...
domestic.
No. It's at the global level. Even when you look at, I'll give you a perfect example of what I call structural barriers to even enter and play in this space to unlock the climate finance. If today you're running a project, you have to register it as a carbon project and so on. You need to get validation and so on. To become a verified body, you need to put a $5 million guarantee. And this is all under the UNFCCC regulations. And I'm like, who in Africa will have $5 million to be able to just put as a guarantee to become a verifier? So we have projects here, and I'm actually usually very strong on this point, that these solutions must be made African. That's where justice begins. That it cannot be that we're trying to fix the problems, but we are trying to fix them from somewhere else, not where we are trying to provide the solutions. The financing, even when you look at the infrastructure funding that is provided, whether through the GCS or the GES or the African Development Bank or Africa Guarantee, all the climate financing monies, I am telling you from experience, O'Brien, I've been in this space for 13 years. It does not hit the grassroots, the locally led initiatives. And I'm saying this with a lot of confidence because for us, we ended up finding local private sector players who have a sense of wanting to do things sustainably as corporates, and talked to them and said, you know what, we are never going to unlock this potential. Yet I have unlocked that potential when I ran companies that had American affiliations. So I really do know what I'm talking about, that the injustice here we have is how is even this money structured? How is it distributed? What are the systems? Because it's one thing to have it, to have the fund. It's another thing to access the fund. You can have $100 billion if you can't afford, if you cannot access it, even if it's there, then it's not there, in other words.
I like the fact that you're bringing in the issue of ensuring that this funding or these finances, get to the most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable are, the farmers, the beekeepers, and all these. And this is what I want to bring on board Mithika. The COP29 has been dubbed as a COP of finances. A number of agreements are expected to be reached in a bid to deepen more funding, and especially to Africa. What do you expect? And I know that the issues around the new collective quantified goal is also coming up in Baku. What do you expect from COP29?
Can you allow me to go back to just a little to what Esther said? I think she is very right. The global financial architecture, not only on climate finance, but the overall development finance, is broken, is outdated, and is not reflective of the current 21st century demands and the needs of the people. So for that, I agree with her, and I think the only mismatch, disconnect which she could be having is really to disconnect global and the local. All these, move together. And that's why you see over and above climate campaign, climate justice campaign, what we are doing is at the whole system, the whole economic, development, transformation. We cannot fix development without fixing climate, biodiversity, okay? The SDGs, debt, tax, and many others. So the dimension which we are doing is just to reflect the global financial architecture which was framed by the World Bank after the Second World War.
Yeah.
It's even applicable at this era, which, you know, the post-World War reconstruction in 1945, reconstructing and correcting the damage in Europe. It was not meant for Africa. And so that is now where we come from. So now framework in Africa in 21st century, and that is why it is not working. And so looking into what we are doing now, we have opportunity to reshape that. At African Union level, President Ruto is actually the champion. I know, I can see Susan is smiling. Why are you smiling? He is the champion.
We all know that. He's been championing for
our African financial. He has been very vocal in that. We are actually looking at the entire overhaul of the reform of global financial architecture so that it is applicable to our realities and aspiration, particularly of the people and African businesses like our communities at the front line of climate crisis and other crises which is facing us, including food crisis. So what we need to look at was she could provide us a solution, maybe. No one has a solution. Maybe she is doing could be working. But really, what has broken is that access. When we were fighting in 2010, before the Green Climate Fund was established, was really to look at what can work. We wanted a financial instrument which is over and beyond World Bank, which by then we were talking about, we were saying this is very bureaucratic, it is undemocratic, it is inaccessible. That is how we really birthed. And the civil society, Action Aid International, Greenpeace, PAGA, and those others at international level, no, don't be cheated. It is us who drove this campaign until we end Green Climate Fund. But when it was established, it was again hijacked. Access to Green Climate Fund, to get money from Green Climate Fund is more difficult to get it from World Bank. And this is what we wanted, a financial institution which was more accessible by her, like a business like her. So let me give the good news is that we have fought, we want it to be reformed. Right now, last month, one of our foremost sons, Amalian, now is our co-chair of Green Climate Fund. Yes. And why we are very happy is that we have been fighting, even during the Africa Climate Summit, we had to really force the executive director of Green Climate Fund to come to our meeting to tell us why we are not getting money. She was apologetic and she said, how do we work together to, even her, she is a Tunisian, how she was asking, how do we make it better? Even her, she has no answer. But you know that it is shaped by global geopolitical, the landscape which we have. The North may want it to be more difficult for you to access, to be taking us round and round, but we hope that we are going to crack it. But now what I want to really correct my sister is that we cannot ignore, and we have been telling people we must connect global and local. But of course, I'm not an admirer or an agent of better than bottom-up economic transformation agenda of the current government, of the Kenya Kwanza government. But even before this came, we were driving this agenda of really bottom-up, really picking these community solutions, community agenda. The communities have got a lot of solutions, as is really rightly said. What we don't have is practicing that. And now to come to that, I want now, I'll sit with her, actually, I have assured. I'll sit with her and take her through, after the show, through what we are calling FLOCA. We are very excited about it. We are signatories of the one global framework, the principles of locally led climate action, which also as civil society we drove, and many governments are signatories of that. That is what we are implementing in Kenya. So now, should I come now back to the question of now the Baku? The Baku, I think Susan has explained it, and that's where we are going. Now what we call the infamous $100 billion US, that target is ending next year. That's why every discussion and what we want to deliver is now a new climate targets in Baku. And that is now the global framework which will take us to the next level of climate finance. Whether it will work or not, we don't know, but we are really fighting. That is the fight we are taking there.
Very good. I'll be coming to you. I'll be coming to you because we're almost winding up. Yeah. But I also want to give Susan, you know, a minute to tell us, I mean, how do we then make COP29 count going forward?
Thank you so much. One of the things that we know is that when negotiations are embedded in policies, in agreements, then it compels the signatories to comply to them. So we have to ensure that we are, I keep saying it, that every agreement dictates it as it was done in Paris, the Paris Agreement 2015, that developed countries must be responsible for contribution that they've made. Secondly, the funds that are being provided to developing countries, we have to ensure that they're embedded in policy documents as grants. The issue of debt, I've spoken about it. Thirdly, we have also to ensure that we are looking at who is the host and how will the framework continue making the funding accessible. As it is, the panelists here have said it, it is not accessible.
It is very hard.
And because this is a global battle, we are not saying we've ignored what is back at home, but we have to unlock it at the global level and come back and continue improving the systems locally. So we have to ensure that the framework works for us. If you're taking it to World Bank, for instance, and they'll be loading an administration cost, that cost itself can change so much in a country like Kenya. Why would we insist on having the loss and damage being facilitated in such a manner? Again, coming back again, looking at the global goals on adaptation, we have to clearly ensure that it's well detailed and it advances the human rights. Because if we miss the element of human rights, and most importantly, the gender issue, if we miss to address the impact of climate crisis on women, on girls, because right here in Kenya, when we have drought, persistent drought, what will happen is that girls will be drawn from schools to walk with their mothers over a whole day looking for water. What does that mean? You miss school. The next thing, if you're coming from a community like in the Northeastern, they will say, if you're not going to school, where is your next place?
Marriage.
Marriage. So before you get married, what happens to you? You have to go through the FGM. As you go through it, you're getting married. Girls are still getting married from 14, 11, 10. Think of your 11-year-old daughter.
It also has a social impact.
It has a social impact, and that is what, for someone like me, the desire to be at COP is to tell them, if you want to know the real damage, check it on the communities back in the South, back in Africa, back in Kenya.
Very good. Yes, Susan. Esther.
Yes, I'm going to comment on two things. When I was a banker, I worked for a multinational bank. And those were the days when you would walk into the bank and they would say, you're not clean enough to open an account with us. But what changed the banking sector and revolutionized the way financial inclusion worked, and this is just for an example, to see what lessons we can draw for the climate conversation, is that locally led initiatives were supported by local authorities then, the central banks, the government of the day. And today, we have those same institutions being studied as study case in the Western universities like Harvard. We have, you know, a lot of examples I'm sure you all know about. Come to telcos, the Safaricom story, it was a local initiative. The M-Pesa story was a local initiative. So what I'm trying to say is that we are not lost for solutions. Innovatively, we can come up with ideas that make us indomitable over time, simply because we stick to it. We are trying to fix our own problems. Yes, we'll appreciate a global play of who is supposed to do what, doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with us. It is us who are suffering the droughts. It is us who are suffering the floods and all the related impacts. And very good with the push and the agenda at the global level, because it's important, it's necessary. The conversation should be changing to access and the changing of that infrastructure so that there is access. Because if it is not there, then we can talk all we want, but at the end of the day, qua ground, you know, the way Kenyans we say, qua ground, we are the ones working with these people daily, we see no change. We don't see the millions of dollars and trillions of dollars that have been approved at all the other COPs. We are not seeing how they are actually creating change on the ground.
Very good. Yeah. I mean, gentlemen and ladies, I mean, unfortunately, we have to come to the close of this conversation. It's very interesting. I mean, and it's always interesting, you know, when you hear different perspectives on how we're going to deal with a climate change crisis or catastrophe, as I like to call it, that the world is facing today. And of course, we as Africans, we are the people paying the heavy price. And so we must come up with a policy and with a practical agenda of how to deal with this. Your time is highly appreciated. Mithika,
thank you.
Susan, and of course Esther.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, well, time now is coming to 12 o'clock, and so we have to wrap things up here on this check. I mean, it's just the last 2 hours we've been discussing serious stuff here. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Kurunzi Mashinani is coming up next. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Have a good afternoon.
Contemporary African photography through the lens of Zimbabwean-born, South African-based photographer Tatenda Chedora is a visual exploration of what it means to be African and Black today.
Some say I'm a fashion photographer, fine art photographer, commercial photographer, but I'm a visual storyteller. I love telling stories through photographs. We paint through light, and that's what basically photography is. I'm at Through the Lens Collective. I'm going to be developing some film today for a shoot that I did a few weeks ago. My photographic style is black, very black. That's what people say. There's a magnification that I place on black skin as an individual. There's a glorification, there's a celebration, and there's a beauty that I'm trying to translate with black skin and black subjects, and also translating other stories of identity in it. I've often been criticized of having a certain selection of subjects. It's either they're too black or it's a person with albinism, especially when it comes to my conceptual work.
In a fast-paced world that leans more to digital, Tatenda works mainly with digital photography, but the nostalgia and timelessness of film photography still makes it an attractive medium.
I pour in some fixer. The fixer fixes the image onto the film so that it doesn't rub off, so it becomes permanent onto the film. My preference is always film. There is a beauty also that comes with grade. I always say to people that digital is still trying to match film. You have film grades that people put over digital images. So there's still something that is authentic and raw when it comes to film photography. And from a creative perspective, it's a much longer process. But I feel like film allows you as an individual to think through the process. You have 36 or 12 slides in a roll of film, so it constricts you from wasting. So that allows you as an individual to be able to be more articulate, to be more concentrated, to be more focused. Whereas with digital, it's instant, it's immediate, and you shoot and look. With digital, you see it. And then on film, I will only see it after it comes from the lab, or I'll only see it after I've processed it.
The aesthetic of film photography carried out on a traditional handprint is something Tatenda appreciates. Though he can develop film himself, he requires the services of Dennis De Silva, the only remaining hand photo printer in the country.
There's a longevity of images printed on film paper is much longer than digitally printed prints. So there's always a beauty in having a handprint because it was carefully done. There's just a beautiful touch to it and having it as a handprint. When I was much younger, I used to cut out images from my mother's magazines. I always used to like that they were for like a school project and collage and put them in scrapbooks. So from there, I did build a subliminal visual library, and I've always had an interest in photographs. And then when I had the privilege of going to university, I went and I studied photography. The difference between commercial work and conceptual work is commercial